This is Fred Kegel, BCUG's club historian and publicity chairperson. Since the COVID pandemic in 2020, the club had suspended all in-person meetings. We continued monthly workshops and general meetings via Zoom. Finally, after a 5-year hiatus, 19 club members gathered together in person at Bellworks in Holmdel, Friday, January 31st, to reacquaint with old friends and to make new friends. At 1 p.m., we met for lunch at Mezza Luna's in Bellworks, and at 2 p.m., we moved to the Holmdel Library, also in Bellworks, for an open discussion on our personal reflections of the computer journey that got us each to where we are today. Several members formerly worked at Bellworks when it was known as Bell Labs, a hub for scientific inquiry, technical research, and development. The following slideshow surprisingly captured much but not all of the open discussion audio. Added comments are welcome below, and for club members only, you may submit additional audio clips of your personal recollections on our BBS, bcug.groups.io. Enjoy.
It may fascinate you to know, I check the obituaries every day to see I'm not in there.
Yeah, we know.
But I also check because people in the club don't tell us when they have moved. Like Ed Shipley moved to Texas. And so I have to somehow keep track of who's still around. So basically nobody has died since 2020. Nobody in the club.
That's good.
Yeah, they're all happy about that.
It should be.
So getting together in person is a wonderful thing. And thanks to Fred for putting in the energy to get us together here and set things up in this place that I love. I love this building. I lived my life 25 years here. And if you haven't been here before, this is a great place to come. People come and walk around the building, bring their kids and play over there. There's a market that during the summer in the middle of the building, people come and sell food, crafts, all kinds of things, clothes. It's in the middle of the day during the summer on Wednesdays only. They may come on Saturday mornings, but I forget. You'd have to check. But I thought I was going to come once during the winter, and I called up to find out, and they said, no, we don't do that in the winter, because people don't come. People don't come out. So the fact that you came out today is terrific. Shows what stalwart individuals you are. And I see plenty of your faces at meetings, and I'd like to see all of your faces at more of the meetings, and bring along your friends. Tell them too. Thanks, Fred. I have membership forms. I said bring membership.
Tell them what the fee is this year.
Oh,
That's important.
you all know we have a dues moratorium this year. So if you have anybody who's interested in getting together with us, it's free for this year at least. It's been free the last 2 years too. Bring them along.
Just as a refresher, why don't we just go around and announce our names in case we have forgotten who's who? Starting maybe in the back.
Henry Hom.
Henry,
I'm Ken Park.
Ken,
Sandy Duma.
Sandy, Mary,
Sandy Rand.
Sandy,
George.
George,
Dick Barrett.
Dick,
Steve Miller.
Steve,
Andy Kerrigan.
Wayne Gloss.
Wayne, hi,
John Waldron.
John,
Alan Kassoff.
Alan,
Howard Goldberg.
Howard.
Bill Sewell.
John Stanford.
Bill Chris.
Sean Johnson.
Yeah, I don't know about Bill Silverman, if it's the real Bill Silverman or the
I checked.
the AI model.
Holograph.
I don't know which Bill Silverman it is, but
We'll talk later, Fred.
okay. Welcome to everybody. We all have a story to tell. of how we got involved with computers and technology, science, whatever. And today I'm going to lead a discussion. This is going to be an interactive discussion. It's not just going to be my story, it's going to be our story. So interject at any time. I like presentations to be interactive. There'll be more appropriate points than others to be interactive, but I like it to be a discussion rather than a presentation. Anybody can read a PowerPoint slide, but the PowerPoint slide is only kind of going to guide us. It's not going to be what it's all about. So, this is not going to be about the personal computer history. However, it may be a little bit. We can't avoid talking about the hardware and the things that you guys have used, the software. We can't avoid it. But I want it to be more about our personal influences, maybe people who have influenced us, our incidences and coincidences. We know, or we knew, a very close friend who used this term, and it has a lot of meaning. Things happen, and some people say they just happen, and other people say they happen for a purpose. So, you pick and choose whatever interpretation you wish to make. My own life has been unplanned. I didn't plan on certain things. There was no computers when I was growing up, so things happened, and along the way, I adapted, or I took an interest, or I didn't take an interest, and I think all of you have done pretty much the same thing. So things are incidences, and things are coincidences, and we don't know which is which. We will also be talking about, in general, our interests, my interests, things that I was fascinated with long before my first computer. My first computer was in 1978, my personal computer. I did a lot of computer stuff in the 60s, but my first personal computer was a TRS-80 Model 1 cassette-based computer that I got a 10% discount because I bought one share of Tandy stock back in 1978. But my inclination towards that end started way, 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 way back, some 30, 40 years before I got my first computer. And I'm going to backtrack with my own reflections to give you an insight as to what I think led me to the computer. And in general, I've heard you, John, in particular, say you are a very curious person. And I think part of this is a very curious thing that we're doing. There is this sense of curiosity. I'm going to get a little soapy with that, and also a little scientific with that at the end. 1940s. Most of us were born around the 1940s. Yes? No? Yeah. Okay. There was a war going on, and there was a scarcity of goods. In particular, there was a scarcity of butter. I didn't know any of that except the chocolate. I knew the chocolate was scarce because when I went to the movies, they didn't have any chocolate bars in the vending machines. Remember the vending machines? You put the money in, turned the crank out, and the candy came out. Well, there was a shortage of chocolate. That I knew. But I didn't know there was a shortage of butter until my mother told me a story that we had a dog, and she stayed in line for hours to get a pack of butter. Butter was rationed. And when she came home, she put the butter on the table, and wouldn't you know it, the dog ate the butter. So things were scarce. We were not deprived. We didn't know we were deprived, but things were scarce. And we all remember what were they made out of? Steel, zinc?
Those gray ones?
Yeah, the gray ones.
The gray ones, yeah.
Oh, it is zinc alloy? Yeah. Okay, this is where I grew up,
in Wilmington, Delaware.
Okay.
This is a recent picture. I thought it nothing of the neighborhood. My bedroom is this a laser pointer? I don't think there's a laser pointer. My bedroom is above my father's paint and hardware store.
Okay.
And we had a very small house. We had a very small backyard. And in the back of the backyard, there was a garage which my father used for storage. And initially, he started off just with paint and hardware. Later on, as the war ended, he started a rental tool business. And he moved to a different store. So I had access to tools long before I knew really what to do with them. I was actually giving customers instructions on how to use these tools. But my humble beginnings started here in a row home. The bus stopped right on the corner. I was a block away from my school. There were several parks in the area. Big swimming pool comparable to Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I had a good upbringing. I mean, I was a normal kid, I thought. We had sand lots that we played baseball. We had no organized sports at that time. We got together, we played the game, we fought, we argued, we made up our own rules. How many of you can identify? Yeah, how many of you can identify with that? Right. There was no supervision initially. Initially, it was just you winged it. However, at a very young age, I don't remember exactly, I read the baseball rules because I wanted to know, if a ball was fair or foul, if it rolled down the foul line, third base. So I actually read the rules. And I just, was that kind of a kid. So I had to be very, very precise. If I was going to argue with other kids, I wanted to know a little background. I had a dog. I had a wagon. We also, because my father had a store and he got things wholesale, I'm sure, I had a flexible flyer sled that went further than anyone else's sled in the wintertime. None of this plastic crap. None of this plastic crap. But it was the 1940s. I had very few toys. I see my grandkids these days, all this plastic stuff, and their focus sometimes, I'm judging by their attention to one particular toy, is very short. I had very few toys, and the toys that I had, I may not have concentrated, may have not have thought that I was concentrating, but with just very few things to concentrate on. And if I did concentrate, I had to stick with it because there was nothing else. We had one radio. We had one telephone with a party line. Actually, we had an extension. My mother used to get on the party line if I would talk to some girls. So that was the limit of our phone communication. We had later on, my father didn't believe in color TV until about 1954. He didn't think it was perfected until 1954. So we didn't have any color TV for a long time. But we were able to go up to the neighbors and share the TV, the old Motorola TVs. So growing up, you had boxes too, huh, Bill?
I understand.
You understand.
Yeah, I can see.
I grew up in my father had a paint store, and you had to do something with the paint cartons. You couldn't recycle them, or you didn't recycle them at that time.
Right.
So I had the boxes in the backyard, and I imagined that I was building a house. I wasn't calling it imagination, but I was using my imagination, I suppose. Just moving them around. No thoughts of becoming an architect, but this was my humble beginnings. 1940 onward, my interest in my hobbies. I've heard this from many other people that I've talked to, that they like to take things apart. I heard that from Tim Zebo the other day. And when he took some things apart as a young child, people would say to him, "You're going to become an engineer," or "become an engineer." Just the very fact that I took radios apart, I just took radios apart, never thought of becoming anything. I just like to take things apart and see how they work. I couldn't always put them back together, and there was always be that extra screw that I couldn't put it in, or the threads were stripped. But I like taking things apart, looking at them. I didn't know what was working or not working. I just like to look inside. How many of you have done that kind of stuff? Take things. Yep. Okay. All right.
Big Ben alarm clocks.
Alarm clock?
Yeah, the big alarm clock like that.
Yeah.
Wind up.
Yeah.
And I would take them apart and oil them up and put them back together.
You were able to put them back together.
Mostly.
Mostly. I was able to put them back apart up together, most of the time, but there was always, one thing that I couldn't always put together, or I didn't do it all in one shot one day, and if I came back to it, there was always an extra screw. To this day, I still take things apart, and I always have that one extra screw. The threads don't work, or it's the Phillips head is worn down. So I also like all kinds of puzzles, slide number puzzles. And just recently, actually, I took interest in the Rubik's Cube, but I cheated. I had to find instructions on how to do it. But then the challenge was to remember the steps. So I would remember up to a certain point, and then I couldn't remember the other parts. Kept doing it. Finally, it started to sink in. And, none of it made any sense. I certainly can't do it as fast as they purport to be able to do it. But I just took interest in the whole thing, the Rubik's Cube. How many of you have played with slide puzzles and Rubik's Cube? Rubik's Cube? Yeah, okay. I also liked secret codes and secret messages. These were in, I guess, magazines and newspapers. And I also played chess at a very young age. I went to a cousin for Christmas Eve, and I'm Jewish, so is my cousin, but we hung up stockings. And the next day, what do I find? A chess set. And I learned chess also by reading the end solutions of how you solve with just a king and a rook. I actually learned strategy. I had no inkling for the opening strategies, but I learned the ending strategies. I just found chess very challenging, but I also find it very relaxing. To this day, I play against the computer. I just enjoy playing chess. And I think some of you have challenged me to play chess, or we've talked about it. Somebody said they play chess. How many play chess? Some. Okay, 1940s onward again. I also like magic, and I like science in general. And there was a blur to me when I was young. I saw a lot of things that, you fill up water with different levels of water, you tap them, and you have different pitches. That's not magic. That's actually, that's science, But this one particular experiment on the right, I can't remember who showed it to me, but you have a milk bottle. Of course, you don't see milk bottles like that anymore. And I had a hard-boiled egg. And what you did was you burned some paper inside the bottle, and what happens? And why?
Use up the oxygen gas.
Okay, and that creates a,
Vacuum.
right. And when did you learn that? In college?
No, way before.
Yeah, way before. That's what I learned too. These things, weren't taught in school. These were learned outside of school, and you learn these things way, way before you formally learn them. And, somebody introduced it to me, I'm not sure who, but these are the experiences that I had. This one little experiment sticks in my mind to this day. But you can't find a bottle like that. Sandy.
My father got me a railroad set, and what he used to do, we never had it set up and left it there. We always had to put it up each time. And what he would do is when we set it up, he would put a short circuit in it someplace. So I had to find out where before I could play with it. So that was something that made me want to do project.
Mike Rowan. Hello. Mr. Carpenter.
The original Buzzkill Daddy, huh? Had to work.
Anyone else want to relate something at a young age? At an old age? I also had collections. I collected stamps. I collected coins. I collected all kinds of items from cereal boxes. There were things in cereal boxes. They were flags. There were cars. There were states. All kinds of stuff.
In the shredded wheat boxes, they had straight arrow ingenuity cards.
Yeah, what were they?
Well, this straight arrow was a program on the radio, and it was kind of in the same time as Gene Autry and what were some of those other cowboy things. Of course, I grew up in the West, so that's,
Anyone else want to relate something?
Yeah, you used to collect little plastic toys from Cracker Jack pops.
Cracker Jack box. Ranger Joe. Ranger Joe. Collections.
Nowadays, it's a piece of paper.
You know, it's just a piece of paper, a tattoo or something, yeah.
Steve.
I took apart electronic stuff, I think just to collect the parts that I sorted out and learned. And it really, I had a tree house in the back, and I was interested in radio type things. I had an uncle, no, a cousin, who became the TV engineer for a local TV station, I guess we were talking about. And I wanted to have like a radio. And so he gave me some measurable advice of the inductors and capacitors and adjustable. So he gave me the values of things that I could use as fundamental stuff.
How old were you?
Generate,
How old were you?
radio. I don't know. Might have been teenager or grade school. Maybe 12. And anyway, that became, for me, that was marvelous. And I in the end, I became an electrical engineer because of that beginning of magic in the past.
Yeah, science when we were young was, to me, magic. I didn't know whether it was science or whether it was magic. It is what it was, I didn't categorize it. Bill, Chris.
I'll chime in. So, my name's William Howard Chris. I'm actually named after my uncle, William Howard Chris, who died in the Second World War. And he was an amateur radio operator. My father, when we lived in Philadelphia, Grafton Street was a ham. And he sucked me in and got my novice license when I was 12 years old. So I had my radio set in the bedroom, and I tell you, it was great because by the time I got to college as a double E, we had that first introductory course. Oh, okay, so that's what this stuff does. And we went on from there.
I'm going to mention things about ham radio because I was a ham too.
And
Yeah.
by the way, at home, I have a radio amateur handbook from my great-grandfather's store, and the date on it says 1924.
Wow.
Doublier capacitors, all kinds of stuff.
1924.
1924.
Wow.
It's only 100 years old.
100 years old.
Yeah.
Collector's item.
So when I was in the Army for my MOS, they sent me to the signal school in Georgia, U.S. Army Signal School. And it was very high tech because it was a signal school. Classes were given on a TV screen. You never saw an instructor. They'd march across to the school classroom, sit there for 8 hours learning Morse code.
Morse code.
Morse code.
6 months of
Morse code.
So here's the thing, when I got back to my home unit, we all had radios. I never used the Morse code.
Interesting thing about Morse code,
What?
you know how he designed it?
How did we design Morse
How
code?
did he design Morse code?
You're going to tell us.
The letters that appear more frequently have a shorter distance. That's why when you're watching Wheel of Fortune, you always start with the vowel E, dot. Then you go to I, dot, dot. Then you go to, you do it, S.
Dot, dot, dot.
Right, okay.
We're going to have a Morse code test here. What is?
But the point is, the letters you guess are the ones that are shorter.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
See? Another piece of useless information. Maybe you can use it on Jeopardy sometime.
Did you do something like that coming up with the QWERTY keyboard?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Could be.
Yeah, that to avoid the keys of a typewriter,
The sticking.
sticking together.
Yeah.
They rearranged.
Could be, yeah.
But then, what was the premise under the Dvorak keyboard?
Who knows?
People are learning it. There's no QWERTY. Let's do something to confuse them more.
Right.
I thought that was supposed to be more efficient, the
I have no
Dvorak. I wouldn't know.
I never took a typing class, so I wouldn't know.
Well, it sounds like it would be if the letters that are more used would be closer together on the Dvorak. And I think he said the QWERTY one,
QWERTY, yeah.
they moved the letters that were more used apart from each other so they wouldn't stick. Because if you have more used letters next to each other, they might stick together. You know,
Yeah, I hear-
and then
okay,
they
makes
start rubbing
sense.
against each other or something.
Yeah, speaking about typing, my father loved to type when he was going to school, and he insisted I learn typing.
Okay.
And the way he taught me was he put masking tape over all the keys.
Ah,
He forced me to learn typing,
okay.
and I didn't realize, the benefit later on. But that's how I learned typing.
My typing is terrible. But as a kid, less than 10 years old, my mother talked about taking typing in high school. And old Remington brand, and they would put black, she had a typewriter, they would put these black metal caps on the keys. You had to take a typing test, you couldn't see the keys. But the way dear old mom would freak out my friends was my sister was starting to drive, and they talked about friends getting pulled over, drinking and driving. You had to recite the alphabet backwards. My mother could do it faster than I could say the alphabet forward. Because for the typing test, you had to be able to type backward and forward.
You had to type backwards for the typing test?
You had to be able to type the alphabet backwards.
Oh, the alphabet backwards?
Type the alphabet forward and backwards.
I can't even say the alphabet backwards.
She could do it faster than I could say it forward.
My most useful course, single most useful course was about 7th grade, learning typing. Because I use that from then on.
Typing was for secretaries back
Oh.
I learned it in high school.
then. There you go.
Yeah.
The other typing in junior high, which is that middle school,
Yep.
and there was only 2 guys in the class. All of them were females.
Of course. That's why the 2 guys took it.
I also, Bill Silverman.
I was challenged to type with my toes. How'd that work out? That's without shoes on. We're making music up.
Yeah, it's easier without the shoes.
Mike,
Yeah, my stepdad made me take typing in summer school between 8th grade and freshman year at Redneck Catholic.
he made you take it.
Yeah, because he typed at work. And,
He punished you, yeah.
well, yeah, I wanted to go to the beach. Yeah, I am now. And he said, don't you use one of those electrics, because they just had some electrics in there, you learn on a manual. I couldn't even push the A down on my pinky.
What kind of school was that?
Middletown.
Remember that?
You remember that, okay.
Absolutely, man.
They had this summer school at Middletown North. But I went
Yeah.
to St. Agnes.
Paperboy.
And I went to Redneck Catholic.
Okay, so you learned typing in St. Agnes.
As a paper boy.
So you didn't
And
realize.
between summer, between St. Agnes and Redneck Catholic.
I still have mine.
Still have yours? Okay.
I still have mine. I don't carry any change. I don't know. I don't even carry any dollar bills.
Not very, yeah, right. Yeah.
I don't carry any money around anymore.
What's money? What's green money?
But having worked in my father's store at a very young age, I did, as little I knew, a customer bought a can of turpentine or something, I had to give change. So I had to learn how to do that. I learned how to use a cash register, learned how to make change. The coin changer, I don't remember if I used that in the store or outside the store, but I know I have it, and I still have it, and I don't quite remember the context.
Were you an ice cream man?
No, I wasn't an ice cream man. I did make pizzas at one time. I did make pizzas.
Oh, the old,
Remember the salt and pepper or marble
yes.
notebooks? What was on the back of them?
Times table.
Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but I was drilled my multiplication tables.
Oh, yeah.
There was none of this stuff trying to figure and reason it out. You had to show your work. 7 times 8 was 56. Done.
Period.
Done. 7 times 9 was 63.
Why
Done.
did they stop at 12?
Why did they stop at 12? Did they stop at 12?
Yeah.
Well, for me.
I went up to 15. I'm pretty sure I went up to 15.
We just went up to 12.
Always went to 12.
You went to 12?
The size of the paper, maybe.
Size of the paper.
Someone figured going above that would be too gross.
But
Bada bing, you get it.
But the emphasis was on memorization,
Yes.
rote.
Yeah.
Reasoning came later. It wasn't immediately taught in school. There were also units of measure, cups and
Yes.
ounces and fluid ounces and all that stuff. That was reference. I didn't memorize any of that stuff, and I still don't know anything about that, except I do know centimeters to inches is what?
2.54.
2.54.
Next.
Got it. Good. Yeah.
39.37 yards to meters.
Yards to meter. Right. Okay. There's certain things that, where do they come from? Somebody drilled them into you.
That's right.
Can you reason it? Can you do a proof? Who cares?
That's right.
With the numbers, just the 1 in a million, just, to talk about this is 1 in a million or one, only because we worked with parts per million,
Oh,
with all kinds of gas analysis. A lot of things you hear, 1 in a million or whatever. What is 1 in a million?
1 in a million?
Means absolutely nothing to most people. But to put it in context, 1 in a million is the relationship of 1 inch to, I believe it's 15.7 miles. That's 1 in a million. And when they talk about, we dealt with gas impurities. So total impurity, total 1 part per million, they called 6 nines purity.
Yeah.
99.9999% pure. That was your 6/9 purity. Okay? 1 in a million. These days, from the time that I was out of the business to now, the typical unit of measure is parts per billion, an order of magnitude greater. So when when they talk about these large numbers, whether it's federal debt or distance or depth, you have to try to find something to put it in context, so it means something. Talking to Steve, he was talking about gas mileage on his Prius. What did you say, Steve? 160?
160 miles per gallon.
160 miles per gallon.
Wow.
65,000 miles.
Wow.
It doesn't mean anything to anybody unless they bought gas.
It's true.
So, you have to think about it in context. That's all.
Anybody else want to interject?
When I was
Henry.
young, my parents teach me abacus.
Abacus.
Because that's how they use it in his laundry store when he adds up numbers.
Right?
Like a shirt is so many cents, it's this much. He just uses an abacus and adds it all up. In fact, there was one customer, who tried to debate my father about the price of his laundry. So my father takes out his abacus and says, "I'll show you how I come up with this number." And he does it in an abacus. Boom, you see, that's the right price. And the customer can't dispute him.
And that's a calculator that shows you its work.
Right.
That's right.
This was my first algorithm, and my mother actually taught it to me. She was not given an opportunity for formal education, but she brought this over from Europe when she immigrated to the United States, actually through Canada. And it was later written up in Scientific American. I remember it because I also used it. I had a tutoring center, and there were kids who just could not get the multiplication tables. So the way it works, the fingers are these numbers, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when you touch the fingers, let's say I do 7 and 7, 7 times 7, you count the ones that are touching and below as tens. So that's 40. And then you have to multiply the 3 times the 3 is 9. It's a lot of work just to get that answered, but it works. Or if I want to do, let's say, 9 times, let's do 9 times 6. So 9 times 6, the ones that are touching and below, I didn't do that right. 9 and 6 is this one. Okay, 9 and 6. The ones that are touching and below are counted as tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 50. And the numbers above you multiply. 1 times 4 is 54. There's a lot of work to do that, but nevertheless, it works.
And it's visual.
And there's lots of variations to that. There's a whole period of time where there was concentration on this finger math called Chisenbach. And I also just learned very, very recently that the way we do arithmetic is not universal. For example, the way we multiply and carry numbers, starting from the right, you multiply, the carry, all that stuff. Singapore does it the other way. They start from the left and go to the right.
Wow.
And there's no carrying involved. They just, they take the numbers on the right. And I saw that on probably on one of the PBS broadcasts. And it made a point, what we assume when we learn things is not written in stone. There's more than one way to do something. There's obviously got to be more than one way to do something. So there's different ways that we've come about, learning whatever we've learned. It doesn't really matter. If you learn it and use that information, it doesn't matter. Comment.
I read something really interesting about how the phrasing of the issue when you want to multiply something, for instance, is different in India. In their schools, in elementary school, they don't say 3 times 4. They don't ask the student, what's 3 times 4? Because that confuses people sometimes. They don't even know what you're saying. What they say is 3 4 times, which makes a big difference for some people, you know, to think about it like that.
That makes more sense, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
3, 4 times, yeah. Any other comments? Okay, 1950 is when I discovered shortwave radio. We visited Atlantic City in the summertime. We stayed in these beautiful old rooming houses. And Atlantic City, along the coast, there's no tall buildings or anything. There was this, not exactly this one, but there was this floor model radio that had these different bands. And I just, I turned the knobs and I was getting all kinds of countries around the world. I was just fascinated with it. Shortwave radio was a discovery for me that I really took a liking to. And you're nodding your head again.
Yeah,
Yep. Ham radio, shortwave radio.
yep.
Back home, in my neighborhood, they built this boys club, which housed a recreation center. We played basketball. We had some boxing stuff, all the usual things that boys do. They had a 1 TV. We used to watch Howdy Doody. And we used to watch Bandstand. Friday night we had movies. The reels would always stop at the same point with Abbott and Costello. But they also had a library in there. And in the library they had a Boys Life magazine. Not a science magazine, but a Boys Life magazine. And it was there that I discovered the relationship between wavelength and frequency. In a Boys Life magazine, not a science magazine, not something in school. And that was something that, just happened to happen. That's what I mean by incidences and coincidences. You don't know where you're going to pick up things. It just is what it is.
I used to string antennas.
Say again?
I remember stringing antennas of different lengths. I had a shortwave radio, and I got obviously what's the American channel? Radio America. But I also remember very distinctly getting the Soviet Union type broadcast in English.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I was spying in a way.
Alan.
There's a very interesting place to visit in New Jersey called the Marconi Labs, I think it's called. That was a transatlantic person.
Right up in the Highlands, or the Atlantic Highlands, the Highlands?
Is that down in Wall
Mid-States.
Township?
Where is it, Wall?
I think.
No, at Fort Evans is one thing, and then there's one all the way up in the Highlands, or Atlantic. I get them confused.
All the old equipment and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Actually donated an old computer of mine there. No Apple.
You're talking about the Twin Lights in Highlands?
No,
Yeah.
that's one too.
Well, that's where they started a while ago.
Yeah.
They got a nice little museum there if you have time to go work it.
Also at the Boys Club, there was a wood shop. And the wood shop, we had the ability to use dangerous stuff, probably, when I think back at it. And they let us use electric saws,
Very dangerous.
very dangerous stuff. But they taught us safety. We wore goggles at least. Nothing for the fingers, but they taught us goggles. So the thing that's in dark brown is what I cut out. And then what you do is you put a belt, you suspend the belt either off the edge of the table or you hold it with your finger, and it doesn't fall. Why doesn't it fall? Come on, you scientists, engineers.
Balanced, center of gravity.
Center of gravity. Center of gravity. When did you learn about center of gravity in college?
High school physics.
You learned it in high school? Okay. I thought I learned it in one of the levels of calculus. I don't think I heard the term center of gravity until until till sometime in college with calculus. But I was curious that, we did it. To me, it was a trick. It was magic. I didn't think of it as science when I was learning it. But things happen.
Fred, excuse me, did you make this image or did you find it?
I found that image.
And you found it by looking up a belt hanger?
Uh,
So I've never seen this experiment. I've never heard of it. Anti-gravity belt.
Try anti-gravity belt hanger,
Gotcha.
belt hanger,
Okay.
belt hanger.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you teach?
No. Just
You have you have
just
kids?
Full of curiosity.
There you go. You have kids?
No.
Oh, okay. You're the kid.
I am the kid, yeah.
Popular Electronics.
Oh, yeah.
Popular Electronics. I had a subscription to Popular Electronics, but I didn't have a lot of money, and the subscription always lapsed. And every time I would renew it, there would be a whole new generation of electronic components. All of a sudden, there were transistors and integrated circuits that appear. Then my subscription would lapse, and then we have computer kits, and then we had personal computers. I was never into the kits. MITS, Altair, I was never into that. Heathkit, yes.
Okay.
Heathkit, Allied, Knight.
Yeah, Knight.
I built a volt ohm meter.
Okay.
You had step-by-step instructions, and you were dealing with electronic components, capacitors, resistors, wires, solder, all that poisonous stuff. Alan?
There was a street in downtown Lower Manhattan called Cortlandt Street.
Yeah?
I don't know if anybody's been there. They had store after store.
Yeah.
With all the little parts and everything. Great for shoplifting. I got caught.
I've heard about it, yeah.
You remember the color codes on the resistors?
Of course.
Really?
Every good boy.
Boy does fine, but Vita kids willingly.
You're kidding. Every good boy does something like music.
Every good boy does fine, but Vita kids willingly.
Huh?
That's the 50 years ago way to remember it.
Huh?
Probably can't say that today.
What's RG Biv?
Huh?
RG Biv,
RG Biv?
red, orange, yellow.
That's the rainbow.
That's tolerance.
Rainbow.
That's a rainbow. That's a rainbow.
Yeah, that's tolerance. 5%, 10%, 20%.
All that good stuff. It was drilled into us, but that's all the good stuff.
Absolutely, man.
Well, there was my
Oh, yes.
real involvement with shortwave radio. I was fortunate enough to be selected to join a summer science camp. This is now in Wilmington, Delaware, home of the DuPonts,
Okay.
Hercules, Atlas, all the chemical giants.
Right.
And they not only introduced us to science, but they took us on tours of the different plants in Delaware. Wilmington had all these plants there. And one thing that impressed me about the DuPont company, when we went to visit the DuPont company, the people who were doing work there and their titles did not coincide. They may have had a completely different title or completely different educational background for what they were doing. For example, I visited where they were doing tire tread measurements. They would spin tires. They tell you that your car tires are going to last 60,000 miles or 50,000 miles. Well, they have to test it somehow, some way. So they were doing testing, and the people who were doing the testing, they weren't necessarily scientists. They were not even engineers. They might have had a history background. The titles that they had, the educational they had, were not necessarily copacetic. They did not jive. Now, I'm not saying that's a rule of thumb, but that's something that impressed me. It doesn't really matter what your title is. It matters more in terms of what you actually do, what you accomplish. So that's something that impressed me. And Steve, you will appreciate this. Part of my training, we took trips to the effluent from some of these factories, what they were doing back in the 50s to control the effluent, the waste from some of these factories. They were doing a lot to clean up the water in the Brandywine and down in the Chesapeake Bay, way, 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 way back. So I learned about environmental concerns way, way back then, part of this summer program that I had. Also, I had a project. The project required, I could choose whatever I wanted to do. I had to keep a log and everything. So I built this FM, this shortwave to FM converter. I think it converted to FM. I don't think it would convert to AM. And on the left panel, there are these coils, the plug-in coils that change the bands. Yep. And in the front, there was a gang capacitor that as you turn that, of course, that would, between the coils and the capacitor, that would determine the frequency that you were tuning in. So that's how this thing worked. And then there was a loop, an antenna loop somehow that I wrapped around an FM radio, and I would hear the broadcast on the FM radio. The first station I ever heard, the first broadcast I ever heard, Richard Bradford would appreciate this, was from Australia.
Oh.
And it came with this little gadget here, it came in as clear as day. Wow. Clear as day. And I learned this from a magazine called Electronics Made Easy. It might have been a subsidiary of Popular Mechanics, as I recall. Or it may have been a separate magazine. I don't quite remember exactly. But over here, I had a schematic, but there was nothing like the Heathkit, nothing like there wasn't step by step. It said, okay, this capacitor goes from point A to point B, and solder and wing it, and it worked. It actually worked for a good 20 years before. I don't think it works anymore, but it worked for a good 20 years. And nowadays, I don't know what's happened to shortwave. Anybody know? It's probably carried over the internet.
Name?
Joe Wilkes?
Yeah. I mean, it's still here.
Joe would know.
Yeah. I mean, he's still active in shortwave and ham radio.
Who was that?
WA2SFF. Joe Wilkes.
He was a member.
Yep. He was my office mate in 1979.
I got my ham license in high school. W3BHTs, my call letters. I only got the novice at the time. I could only do the 15 words per minute. At the Trenton Computer Festival one year, it was raining. I decided to take the cram test, and I think I got my technical license. Just for the heck of it, I got my technical license. Yep. But ham radio was a real turn on for me. Anybody else want to add to any comments about?
K2LEB. That's me.
Hey.
KN3JTV.
What is shortwave? I know it's a shorter wave, so it's a higher frequency, right?
Yes.
And so is it? Does it go longer?
It bounces off the ionosphere.
It bounces off the ionosphere, yeah.
So it bounces and can go around the planet.
Oh, okay.
Bouncing off
Okay.
an ionic flare.
Yep.
Fred, I just want to mention, I mean, I have an appointment later. I'm going to have to leave at 3:30.
Okay. What time is it?
4:15.
Okay.
We only got up to shortwave radio.
Any day now we'll get the computers. We're good.
I don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
this is how Fred got into it, but influences and coincidences.
Yeah.
I didn't do most of these things as a kid, but somebody offered me a job at Bell Labs.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I started out going to summer schools to study space science. I was going to be an astronaut. And literally in 1956, 57, 58, I went to summer school studying space science with a book that NASA had put out, right? I mean, it was Sputnik time, I did that. But then when I got to college, and after they let me out of being a server in the cafeteria as my college level job, they put me into a lab, which happened to be the far infrared spectroscopy lab. But my job was putting the card decks into the IBM machine. And then the first IBM 360 came to MIT, and my fraternity brothers all left whatever departments they were in and joined the civil engineering department so that they could work on the civil engineering IBM 360, the only one there, one of the first 3 in the country. But I got into computers, and then Bell Labs hired me into this building at the beginning of Unix. I mean, I hired here 72, and we started using Unix in 74. I taught Unix, all of Unix, in a sense. I think I have the certificate, 1978. I'm the guy who taught most of the people who used Unix here, because I was one of the first group using Unix. And then I was part of that evolution of industrial computing. We no longer were using, I mean, PCs came out of IBM, but how many of you use Unix?
Yeah.
I mean,
I predated you.
Unix we could put on a tiny computer, the smallest computer. And that's how I just kept growing up with it.
Wait, once we had Unix in the various locations, one of my jobs was to communicate with the other Bell Labs locations.
Yeah.
And work together. And so we actually put them together in network. Didn't take much, but we then could write email. That was, we were writing email using our Unix systems, so if you were to get something
Right,
else.
yeah.
I would email you. And if, an hour later, I should have changed the word or done something else, I would actually go into your server, wherever you were, and I would make that change in my email to you on your server.
Oops. Oh, yeah.
So we've spent 50 years going in circles, going from mainframe and Unix to standalone PCs.
Yep. To
Give
the
up
cloud.
Unix to go to Windows, and now we're from Windows, there's more of a push to go to networked computers,
Yep.
internet or whatever, and
Oh, back.
Linux is making a comeback.
Well, this is Unix.
Yes.
iPhone and Mac is
Yeah.
officially a Unix.
So from network to standalone
To network.
to network, from IBM to Unix, back to Windows, back to
And what
Unix.
made that possible was the work that was done here and every place else to improve the network.
Yep. Yep.
Once the expense was putting cable in the ground. Once you had the cable in the ground, you didn't want to dig that stuff up again.
Well, it was also, it was productivity and security, because on the corporate side, 15, 20 years after you, my experience, the local area networks and the local PCs took off because the business users were tired of waiting. And ask IT for any kind of report, and whatever you asked for, the answer was no. Get in line, we'll give it to you, basically when we want it, when we want to give it to you, a week, 2 weeks from now, then maybe you'll get it.
We'll get around to
And
it.
then they found out, well, wait a minute, with a PC, and nobody ever got fired for recommending Novell, nobody ever got fired for recommending token ring. Nobody ever got fired for recommending IBM. So you had all these little department networks. All of a sudden, well, wait a minute. If I want a report, I can create it, or I can certainly get it inside of a day, talk to somebody that knows. So, again, it
So
seems like we're all...
did you start out with all of this stuff, or did you start out with the computers and that stuff when you had a job?
I started out consuming information rather than producing it.
Yeah,
My
but
first
the thing
computer-
is, were you a techie?
No,
So you got a job and you started learning all about computers and networks and stuff there,
yes.
right? I mean, there's more than one. Curiosity, I know, Andy is a curious
No, I never,
guy with curiosity.
I had one
That's
computer, one
the problem.
formal computer class, CI 17. Complete semester, this is rock bottom, in college, no, didn't have anything in high school. In college, CI 17, Introduction to Digital Programming. We spent an entire semester to learn how to create a database using Fortran 4. And I stumbled my way through that, thought the programming absolutely was ridiculous. But okay, necessary evil, keyword is evil. And then, 73, I guess it was. Pardon me?
Eval, programming joke, sorry.
Maybe 73 or so. There was just all kinds of PC stuff going on. There was PC Talk, oh my God, you use a modem. And PC File, oh my God. You could go to the library and for $1, they would give you a 5 1/4 floppy and you could make up your own database and print your own labels. And you didn't have to do any programming. Wait a minute, this is magic. I can buy something for $1, spend a half an hour playing around with it instead of 13 weeks of a college semester. So that's where programming went down the tubes for me.
You know, I remember getting fed up waiting for typing tools to create documents, and so I learned Enrock was in Mecca. And you actually wrote stuff using Enrock assembly. But and I had an arrangement with the typing tool. I would give them the Enrock file, so they would make it pretty. That was my arrangement. But I could very quickly, using my 7th grade typing, I would type up stuff using Enrock on Sigma, give it to them, and they would print it in good form. That was my arrangement.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Any other comments? Okay, just winding down a little bit. All of this, to me, is very, very curious. Whether you are doing it because your job, it's job related. For me, it wasn't job related because there weren't any jobs that said computers. And when I first got involved with computers, actually, I never saw the computer. I was introduced to computers by way of a IBM 1420, an after work course. Never saw the computer. I did key punching for Fortran, and take the punch cards, put it over the window, come back the next day, you get a printed report. But it wasn't really, job related before that, and that's what I'm reflecting on, the stuff that happened to me before that laid the seeds, laid the interest, laid the fascination. And this is just kind of what I'm winding up with my thoughts. Thoughts on curiosity. And there is actually a science called neuroscience of curiosity, because something does happen to the body when you solve a problem, whether it be a carpenter problem or any kind of problem or a computer problem. There's something that's euphoric about that. And there's something very frustrating. We feel the frustration maybe more so than the euphoria. But there's something physiological that happens to the body. And there's a whole body of science now called neuroscience of curiosity. But that, without getting into the neuroscience, because that's a whole other topic, it does involve active listening. It involves questioning. It involves exploration. It involves visualization. For me, the visualization means similar to geometry. You see the end result and then you go back and you work the steps towards the conclusion. And I kind of, when I'm looking at a problem these days, I see in my mind what I want to aim for, because I don't know, if I were just to start randomly, I would never get there. I have to see the end result before I actually start the first step. That's what I'm calling visualization. There's also the dreaming and imagination, imagining things. All you guys that are involved with computers and coming up with creations, you have to use something called imagination. What is that? Can you measure that? There is a neuroscience for that. There's a neuroscience for everything now. Who knows? It may be in our genes. I don't think so, but it may be. I don't know. I think it's more biophysiological, that all these things that we think of as creativity and curiosity are measurable when and if they ever want to and can do. There's also this concept, this is not my idea, this concept of uncertainty. That is, when you're doing something, especially with computers or trying to solve a problem, you don't know the answer. And you have to accept uncertainty. It becomes a way of living with technology. You start out in one direction, that may not work. You try another direction, that may not work. How many times did Edison try? He just tried experiment over experiment over experiment. He just tried different things. Hundreds of times, thousands of times, I don't know. Until he came across the filament that was actually going to light up the light bulb. And it's not that I'm an Edison, but it's that kind of thinking, that there's an uncertainty when you're dealing with computers. And for sure, these days, there's an uncertainty with the information and the content that comes from the computers. Whole nother topic. Whole nother topic. And I want to leave you with the final, yes?
Your final, because I was going to draft with John here. I really, my time with it.
Final thought. I said at the beginning, there's a lot of plastic crap that I see around. My grandkids have a lot of plastic crap. But you could see in their eyes curiosity over a silly potato battery experiment. How many of you know what the potato battery experiment is?
I think I remember that.
Yeah. You stick prods into the potato, and there's a chemical reaction.
Yeah.
So what did they do? They said to me, well, what if we try a tomato? I had some cherry tomatoes. Oh, what if we try strawberries? I didn't tell them that. They happened to see that on the table. And it's that kind of thing that I saw kind of a little bit in myself that I'm now seeing in my grandkid. This curiosity, and you can see the interest, only if they are shown that kind of thing and if they are encouraged with that kind of thing, rather than all these plastic, I won't say the word.
Tell
So,
me about the experiment. I have my 5-year-old I'm going to entertain. So you're just measuring the impedance through a potato.
Just take a voltmeter in it.
It's a voltmeter, but you look for voltage, or what do you do?
Right?
Anybody know how to do the battery experiment?
Can't you light up a light bulb with a battery?
yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Thank you for coming, John, Mary. Okay.